There are relationships that don't begin with pain, but with a warm glance, sweet words, and the feeling of being seen. You believe you've finally found someone who understands you, someone special. But over time, you begin to realize you're no longer yourself. You find yourself constantly apologizing, even when you don't know what you did wrong. You force a smile to keep the peace, stay silent to avoid arguments, and eventually you lose trust in your own feelings. If you've ever felt like you were being loved the wrong way, if you've ever exhausted yourself trying to please someone who never truly listened, then this video is for you. Today, we're not talking about fairy tale romance or empty philosophies. We're talking about truth, about narcissists, people who aren't looking for love but for control. I invite you to stay until the end of this video because what you're about to hear may not be pleasant, but it may be the first step in awakening, standing up, and reclaiming yourself. If you're listening and find pieces of yourself in these words, don't forget to subscribe, not just to keep up with future insights, but to remind yourself, you are not alone on this healing journey. A narcissist rarely shows up as the bad guy from the start. On the contrary, they often come in the form of the perfect partner, a soulmate, or even a savior. They know exactly how to make you feel special, chosen. But once you begin to trust and open your heart, that's when the manipulation starts. Make no mistake, what you're experiencing isn't clumsiness in love. It's a calculated strategy. A narcissist doesn't build relationships on genuine connection, but on power. They're not seeking companionship, they're seeking submission. And the way they achieve that is by making you doubt yourself. You'll start to feel too sensitive every time you react. They'll call you paranoid, too negative, or even make you out to be the problem. While you're caught in self-blame, they'll take on the role of the victim, the one who's trying their best for the relationship. This role reversal is the height of manipulation. It makes you question your own emotions, perceptions, and memories. This is what psychology calls gaslighting. A narcissist doesn't care about the truth. They care about controlling the narrative. They'll twist situations so they're always the one who's hurt, always the one who's right. And when you grow tired of arguing, of explaining, of proving your reality, you begin to choose silence. That's when they win. In this manipulation cycle, bit by bit, you lose faith in yourself. You no longer know which emotions are real, which words are lies. You're no longer living, you're surviving in a gray zone where you're constantly guessing their moods, trying to avoid another fight, a silent punishment, or a cutting remark that keeps you awake at night. And the most heartbreaking part, you once thought this was love. After the enchanting beginning, when you believed you were someone special, the narcissist begins to shift roles from admirer to judge. But what makes it so hard to leave isn't the obvious wounds. It's the alternating cycle of sweetness and pain. They give you hope, then take it away, then give it again, only to snatch it back once more. This is their classic manipulation strategy, the cycle of idealization, devaluation, discard. One moment, you're everything they've ever dreamed of. They praise you, cherish you, make you feel like you've stepped into a fairy tale. But the moment you fall short of their expectations, the atmosphere changes. Suddenly, they criticize you, grow distant, and make you feel like you've broken something beautiful. And you start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Am I still worthy? How can I bring things back to how they used to be? This is where you fall into the trap they've set. You begin chasing the love you thought you had without realizing that love was never real. A narcissist doesn't love you the way you love them. They don't see you as a whole person with emotions, boundaries, and intrinsic worth. They see you as supply, a source of energy to prop up their self-image, to feel powerful, admired, and in control. Intimacy is no longer about connection, it's a tool. They touch your vulnerabilities not to heal, but to manipulate. They apologize not out of remorse, but out of fear of losing control. They need you not because they love you, but because they can't stand the feeling of being abandoned. And whether they walk away first or you're the one who ends it, you still carry the burden of guilt because they made you believe that if you were just better, more obedient, more selfless, things could have been different. But the truth is, you were never allowed to be yourself in that relationship, and that is not love. That is control wrapped in sweetness, a gilded cage filled with loneliness, paralysis, and emotional fragmentation. Here's something most people don't realize when dealing with someone who exhibits narcissistic traits. They are not whole on their own. While they may appear outwardly confident, in control, even charismatic, inside is a hollow self, constantly in need of admiration, flattery, and silent compliance from others to feel real. They don't know how to generate value from within. They can't sit alone in silence and feel okay. Their sense of self is patched together from the reactions of others. Every time you agree, yield, strive, or blame yourself, you're feeding their false image. You are their fuel. The more you love, the more powerful they feel. The more you endure, the more special they believe they are. The more you tolerate, the more they manipulate. And here's the cruel irony. The more you love them with a genuine heart, the more they drain you. Because to a narcissist, kindness isn't cherished, it's exploited. They don't thank you for your patience. They simply think, I deserve this. This is the essence of one-sided emotional dependency. They make you believe that love means sacrifice, submission, endurance. And if you just try hard enough, they will change. But no, they don't change. They just change masks. Because to them, love isn't connection, it's a power game. Psychologically speaking, narcissists don't see others as people. They see them as emotional supply objects. According to the theory of narcissistic supply, you might play one of several roles: the admirer, always praising and boosting their ego; the submissive, accepting their rules, standards, and shifting boundaries; the controlled, the more you suffer because of them, the more valuable they feel. As long as you stay in these roles, you are their life source. But the moment you stop reacting, stop crying, stop explaining, stop fearing, they spiral, not because they love you, but because they've lost control. And for a narcissist, loss of control is the beginning of collapse. When you walk away, you're not just ending a relationship. You're unplugging the life support system from their illusion. No more person to blame for their flaws. No more emotional mirror to reflect their importance. No more scapegoat to carry the burden of their insecurities. And so begins their identity crisis. You may see them quickly replace you with a new victim, come back begging with apologies, promises, and nostalgic memories, or flip the script, smearing you, playing the victim, and seeking sympathy from others. All of those behaviors are signs of one thing: a total loss of control. They are desperately trying to rebuild the emotional ecosystem you just shattered. But here's what truly matters. They're not falling apart because they lost you. They're falling apart because they can no longer control you, because they can no longer manipulate you, because they can no longer make you doubt yourself. And to them, that is the greatest threat to their fragile ego. And what about you? It will take time to heal. You may still miss them, still ache, still grieve. And that's real. That's human. But what you're doing now is reclaiming the steering wheel of your life. You're saying, I will no longer be the tool you use to feed your illusion of self-worth. And that is the most powerful act of self-love and freedom you can take. There's a moment, often quiet, seemingly insignificant, but powerful enough to shake everything. It's when you look in the mirror and no longer recognize your own eyes. The confidence is gone, the spark, the one that knew its own worth is missing. And in its place is doubt, exhaustion, and a quiet question: who have I become? That moment is the beginning of your awakening. You start to connect the dots, how they were always the victim, even when they hurt you. How you were always the one proving yourself, always asking for permission to be loved. You remember the times you cried silently, afraid of disturbing them. The sleepless nights caused by one cold phrase or a distant stare. And you realize this wasn't love, this was captivity. It's heartbreaking to accept that someone you loved never truly loved you, at least not in a healthy way. But what's even more painful is realizing that you loved them more than you ever loved yourself. A narcissist doesn't need you to be clear-minded. They need you confused. They need you lost in emotional contradictions. They need you constantly trying a bit harder, giving a bit more, shrinking a bit smaller. So they remain the center, the one who decides when you are worthy of love and when you should remain silent. But once you begin to see clearly, everything changes. You no longer fall for apologies without action. You no longer tremble at their anger or try to soothe their indifference. Instead, you begin choosing stillness, not the silence of surrender, but the peace of someone waking from a long, exhausting dream. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you feel something you thought you'd lost. You deserve something healthier. Every time you lower your voice to apologize when you've done nothing wrong, they feel more powerful. Every time you explain, hoping they'll finally understand, they know you're still dependent on their approval. Every time you step back, they step deeper into your boundaries. To a narcissist, this isn't a relationship. It's an energy system. They don't seek connection, they seek attention. They don't want to listen, they want praise. They don't need you, they need a mirror to reflect their glory. So when you leave, you're not just walking out of someone's life, you're pulling the plug. You're severing the lifeline they depend on to maintain their fantasy. At first, they may not notice. They'll pretend not to care. They'll fall back on their old tactics, silence, detachment, or portraying themselves as the victim. But then comes the moment when the texts stop, when the explanations never arrive, when the desperate need to control goes unanswered. That's when the panic sets in, because you might have been the only person who ever truly saw them and stayed. Losing you means losing the image they use to cover up their inner emptiness. You didn't just walk away. You did the one thing they feared most. You saw the truth. You refused to be manipulated. You stopped believing they were the center of the universe. And just like that, their world, the one where they were always the victim, the special one, the one hurt by you, begins to crumble. They may replace you quickly, but not out of love, out of necessity. They need a new supply, someone else to take your place. But what they'll never have again is you, the awakened you, the clear-eyed you, the you who stood up. And in the moment you stop chasing their validation and turn to face yourself, something miraculous happens. You no longer feel small. You no longer need to please anyone to feel worthy. You no longer need permission to be loved. You reclaim your life, and that is the one thing they will never be able to control. Escaping a narcissist isn't simply walking away from a relationship. It is the deepest act of rescue you will ever do for yourself. It is the journey of stepping out from the shadows of manipulation, of sweet words that suffocate the heart, and returning to who you once were, strong, whole, and worthy of being loved the right way. You are not weak for staying too long. You simply believe too much in the good. But maturity isn't about never trusting the wrong person. It's about rising after the pain, facing the truth and saying, I will no longer let anyone define my worth. To a narcissist, your silence may be the deepest wound they've ever received. Not because they loved you, but because you're no longer afraid of them. You no longer chase empty promises, emotional games, or fake tears. You've seen them clearly, and you've chosen yourself. From that moment on, you are no longer a pawn in their game. You are the one holding the pieces. You are the one who decides. You are the one who is free. And if you are on that journey or have just begun to consider it, I want you to know one thing. You are not alone. And you are strong enough. Don't forget to subscribe if these words resonate with you. Let your healing journey no longer be a lonely one, because sometimes just one video, one word, one moment of empathy is enough to help you take your next step with greater strength. Stay, because you deserve to be heard, to be understood, and to be loved in the truest sense.